My name is Bill Lawler. I'm the head of product management at Turnitin. I have been at Turnitin for all of 3 months, which makes me eminently qualified to be talking to you all here today. So I'm going to keep my remarks brief and turn it over to Dallas, who is a longtime practitioner of both Turnitin and Canvas, to really talk about some of the best practices, in the marketplace today when it comes to using the systems. But I mean, really what I hope to do is, familiarize all of you with what we're doing in terms of the future of our integration with Canvas, talk a little bit about the company and where we're going, and then really let Dallas kind of dive deep into what we're doing today, like from a best practices standpoint.
Right, so I'm Dallas. I use Canvas and Turnitin together 7 days a week, not quite 24 hours a day, but close. And I'm going to be back up here talking to you guys about what you can do today with Canvas and Turnitin after Bill talks about the future.
All right, cool. Thanks, Dallas. So you can see from my brief bio, I went to the University of Pennsylvania. Anybody here from UPenn? Good. Talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. So I kind of explained kind of what I hope to achieve today. I thought, maybe what I'd do first is talk a little bit just about the company and where we are. I don't know how many of you know it, but we are a billion-dollar company that is 100% focused on writing and academic integrity. And we have new investors. We changed ownership about 3 years ago. We're now owned by a company called IVP, which in the private equity world is the flavor of private equity that's actually growth equity. So really letting us invest in the business. We have more going on in terms of product development and where we not only want to take our integration with Canvas as well as new products, then I think I could spend 2 hours just talking about it. We also have an incredibly strong position in the marketplace because of our student paper database. We have 8 petabytes of student papers. Does anybody know what a petabyte is? Yeah, I don't either, but it sounds really good. Actually, I did look it up. So 8 petabytes would be 12 million CDs. That's how much information we have. Student papers stretching back to the late 90s. So as we look at not only what we're doing from kind of our summative, kind of Gestapo, let's stop plagiarism, but also as we look kind of forward in terms of what we're doing around formative feedback, we have an immense resource in that database. And there's a vast amount of things we can do when it comes to telling, basically, not only are you writing well, are you teaching well, there's an amazing amount of information there. So I'm super excited to be at Turnitin. I was not looking for a job. I was not interested in a job. I was kind of hoping to stay at home for a little bit. But when the company came after me, what really got me was not only my interest in my own children's education and how I could apply my product management experience to Turnitin, but it was really just around that database. It's amazing. And so much is going to come out of that, and I'm going to talk about a little bit of it here today. But as you watch us over the next 6 and 12 months, I think it's going to be a really exciting time. So I'm a cheater. I cheated. That's why I want to know if anybody from Penn was here. So the fall of 1992, there was a woman who lived on the 17th floor of High Rise North on the Penn campus. Let's call her Ellen Y. I don't really want to say too much about it. But Ellen needed help writing her abnormal psych paper. And so I helped her. And when I say help, I mean I wrote her abnormal psych paper entirely. And I think I got a 6-pack of beer for doing it. And I didn't think I did anything wrong. Didn't even occur to me. In fact, that was 25 years ago. It hadn't even popped into my memory until I started interviewing at Turnitin. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm a cheater. I did it. But I didn't think it was wrong. Not only that, I come from a long line of cheaters. So one of my father's favorite stories as we were growing up, it was probably like 1950. He was 14 years old. And he had to, for an English class, write a poem. And the kind of area where we grew up, very rural, Eastern Shore of Maryland, one-room schoolhouse. And so what does any enterprising farm boy do when he's told he needs to write a poem? He hitchhikes to the biggest town, that has a library, looks up the collected works of William Wordsworth, finds the most obscure poem in the book, and then copies it, and then gets a C. So my father loved telling this story, right? And he didn't think it was wrong. And he's telling me, me and my brothers are learning, oh, it's okay to cheat. I mean, basically, it's okay to plagiarize, right? So it's kind of an interesting dynamic. And I think one of the rewarding things for me, especially as I'm kind of in my honeymoon phase with the company, I'm going out and I'm meeting our customers, instructors, administrators, but also students. And what's been really cool is students now are looking at us as an ally. And so, I use the word Gestapo. We're not the Gestapo necessarily anymore. There's a lot of value in what we're doing. People look at our originality reports and it's actually helping them, right? So we're now in a formative phase. We're not just in the summative. So that's really pretty exciting. As I look at where we're going, and I really kind of laid it on a little thick with the 8 petabytes of student data. It takes us into a world that's completely different, right? People value feedback. Students value feedback. Whether it's manual, whether it's automated, fast feedback really drives value for the student and drives value for you as both instructors and administrators. It's a very virtuous cycle. And so, when I look at where are we going to invest going forward, it's not just in getting better at plagiarism prevention. It's really in looking at how can we help students? How can we help you learn? How can we help you write? Since I wrote Ellen's paper in 1992, am very familiar with, not plagiarism, because it wasn't plagiarism, it was original work. But there's this now whole phenomenon of contract cheating, right? And so we got so good at stamping out plagiarism that people now hire others to write their papers for them. So as you look at what we're going to deliver moving forward, we're looking at things like contract cheating. We are looking at things like code, computer science engineering. Are people plagiarizing there? But we're not just doing this from a, we have to stamp it out again. We're doing it from a, how do we help people, right? How do we help them learn? How do we help them write? And that's really our core mission. So let me talk a little bit about where we are with Canvas today. So 2 paths. We have this legacy API. And actually, let me back up for a second. One thing that I've heard very loud and clear in the 3 months I've been at the company is that Turnitin and Canvas gave very inconsistent messages to you about what we were doing. And hopefully you saw about a month and a half ago, some communications start coming out from both companies, really, outlining our path forward. So the API is sticking around until summer of 2018. You heard at the keynote a little bit about the plagiarism framework, so we're fully embracing that. In the meantime, there is still our existing LTI workflow. And so since I've only been here 3 months, everything that went wrong is not my fault. So it's been really instructive for me as I've gone and talked to people, some of the things that we did with the LTI workflow that just are suboptimal. And so a big effort of mine and my team is really to start fixing those things. And so, for example, I'm sure everybody here is familiar with the phenomenon of the upload button and then the submit button. Yeah, kind of sucks. So we're fixing that. I think the second week of August, that'll be out. I have really challenged my team to come up with like the 4 or 5 things that could really improve that workflow. I kind of feel like with the API, you had 1 or 2 clicks to get something done. And with LTI, suddenly you have 5 or 6 clicks. And so part of that's the immaturity of LTI, which is going to change. It's getting better. It's getting more mature. The standard will evolve. But it's also just us, right? And I come from a UI, UX background. And so I start to look at these things and look, how can we really fix some of these things that just take too long? Back in the day, I worked with a ton of Netscape guys. And they had a maxim that if it took more than 2 clicks to get to something, the user was never going to get there, right? And they were thinking about the Netscape web portal at the time. So 2 clicks and that's it. But it's also, I think, very valid when it comes to anything that we're doing. And so we truly value our relationship with Canvas. We value our relationship with everybody here in this room. We want to make your lives easier. We want to make it easier for students, for instructors, and administrators. And so that's really my commitment to you moving forward. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dallas to talk a little bit about some of the best and practice things you can do today.
I am all for you making my life easier, Bill. I appreciate that. At the same time, the reason I'm up here today is because I kind of like the LTI. And I know it doesn't cover all use cases, but I kind of like it. And so I'm going to talk to you about a mission briefing, I guess, so that everyone can more easily accomplish their mission with the current LTI tool. In some ways, Bill and I might have been better off if the conference theme had been Christmas Carol, because he could have done Ghost of Christmas Past and Future, and I could have been Ghost of Christmas Present. Anyway, we're going to talk about configuring the Turnitin LTI for admins, and then for instructors, we're going to talk about the assignment creation in Canvas on the other side and Turnitin. We're going to talk about some common assignment scenarios, draft sequences, rough draft, final draft. We're going to talk about group work and how that plays out, and we're going to talk about what happens when you copy a Canvas course for the new term. So when you're configuring the LTI app in Canvas, and this is going to be under most use cases for your admins, then there are a couple of things. If I don't know how many of you guys have configured an LTI tool, but you go to the App Store, you tell it which one you want. It gives you a handy little form to fill out, and it's great. But looking in the Canvas community, there are a couple of things that throw people off, and I've got 2 things there. One is the domain. If you leave it blank, the LTI works, and it works fine, until an instructor tries to launch into Turnitin from the speed grader or from the gradebook, and then it doesn't work. So you gotta have Turnitin.com in that domain field, or the UK equivalent, or everything works except that launch. Then in the custom fields, and Charlie, you don't have to write these down from my screenshot. You can get these elsewhere. But those custom fields there have some custom code, 1 line of code, and to do a couple of different things. The custom codes sync from Canvas to Turnitin the due dates, the assignment ID, the assignment title, the points possible, the assignment start date. And that makes it so that instructors aren't having to enter the same information twice. I've got some other LTIs I work with, and I've got to say it's worth this many points in Canvas, and I got to go to the LTI and say it's worth this many points. This is the due date in Canvas, this is the due date in the LTI. And that's the way the Turnitin LTI will work as well, unless you've got these custom codes in here. If you need these custom codes and you don't have them, you can find me on the Canvas community site. I'll be happy to give them to you, and I think they're in several places on the community site. You can contact your Turnitin rep or their support staff and get those custom codes. Once you've got the LTI configured, you are, of course, going to create an assignment as an instructor in Canvas, right? And you're going to do that by selecting external tool assignment. When it says submission type, you say, I need an external tool. From your list of external tools, you look for the Turnitin LTI API, or whatever your admin has named the Turnitin tool. There is a little checkbox there. I don't have it checked here. I don't know if you can see it at the bottom. It says load in a new tab. You can check that box or not if you like. I think there's a small convenience to the instructor in checking that box. And it's okay either way, but to be nice to your students, you probably want to be consistent. On our campus, we load everything in a new tab. I've got some LTIs that require me to load in a new tab, and so it's just nice and consistent. Students are used to seeing that button that says load this assignment in a tab on our campus. Now, when you are setting up your assignment in Canvas and you've got your LTI and you're opening in a new tab or not, there are a couple of things you want to do and a couple of things you may not want to do. Because Terrence, I don't feel comfortable telling you what to do. I mean, we don't have that kind of relationship. I would never do that to you. But it's a cause and effect situation, right? If you do certain things in the Canvas assignment setup, certain things are going to happen. You may or may not want them to happen. So part of like what I think people maybe didn't like so much about the LTI is they brought a certain set of expectations, and if those expectations aren't met, you get problems. So you may want to readjust some expectations, or just knowing what's going to happen when you do certain things It's going to help with your help desk calls or whatever you need to do. So you definitely want to have a due date. I mean, you can skip it, but most people are going to use a due date. What you don't want to have, under most circumstances, is an until date. If you have an until date in Canvas, then once that until date hits, it locks the student out of the assignment. And this is going to be true for any LTI that uses an external tool. And so if you lock the student out of the assignment, you lock them out of anything that's in Turnitin. And if you want to do that, then go ahead and put an until date. But if you want the students to have access to originality reports, peer mark, or grade mark comments, or a rubric that you've used, or to be able to submit late after this, then just leave the until date blank. Right? Don't add additional due dates. That doesn't work, right? If you can, you don't have to release it to everyone like I have in my screenshot. If you want to release it to just Bob and Sally, you can do that. Or if you want to release it just to a section or a group of students, but you've got to use multiple assignments for each group. So now that Canvas just recently came out with a copy assignment, set up your assignment, don't publish it, copy it out, and one assign to group, one set for one date. Don't add additional dates. Canvas is fine with it, but it doesn't work with the integration. The available from date, I never used them, but it helps with the integration. Canvas wants to know, or I'm sorry, Turnitin wants to know when it's okay for the student to submit the assignment. And Canvas is okay with you not using that date, but Turnitin wants to know. So it's good to have that. I set it and I copy my courses and I've never looked at it again. I don't like to look at dates. The fewer dates, the better. So once you get finished on the Canvas side, now you've got the Turnitin side. And this is maybe some of the UI stuff that Bill was referring to. But you go to once you open the LTI connection, then you're by default in the assignment inbox. And what you want to do is hit settings. Now you'll see that there's some basic information here, and you can see that the maximum grade, the start date, and the due date are all grayed out, right? The feedback release date you can actually edit. The default is the due time that you've set in Canvas. If you want to keep your feedback top secret until you're done grading so the Canvas messages don't start flowing in, asking questions about feedback and grades, then you've got two things to do if you're grading and turn it in. If you're grading and turn it in, you want to adjust that feedback release date to something in the future while you're grading, and you want to mute the assignment in the Canvas. Otherwise, they're going to be able to see one or the other, right? Now, if you're not doing your grading and turn it in, you don't care if they see their originality report, you can leave it as it is. If you don't care if the students see their feedback as you grade your papers, you can leave it as it is. But again, I'm not telling you what to do, but it's cause and effect there. So some things to think about. Now, once you hit the settings, there are optional settings in Turnitin that give you a huge amount of functionality, and there's a lot of options here. You can use the optional settings to control whether or not Turnitin accepts late submissions, which sources are being compared in the originality report, the resubmission policy, whether or not to include the bibliography in the originality report. Do you include quotes, small matches? Do you allow students to access the originality reports? What's the repository status? Are you storing the papers in the repository or not? Do you want to add a peer mark assignment? Rubrics, do you want to build out a rubric, attach a rubric to the assignment to grade? The E-rater, and my favorite, save defaults. If you have a consistent instructor who always uses the same, then they've only got to visit the settings once. They set their favorite settings, they save it as their default, and they're done, right? Somebody who does all sorts of stuff like I do, I'm constantly changing my settings, I'm in the optional settings a lot. Somebody who just wants an originality report and that's all they want, they set their settings and they're good. Right? Now, I've been teaching for like 15 years, and I don't know, slide transitions still seem like kind of awkward to me, but we're just going to pretend like I had an awesome transition. And we're going to say that once you get the assignment set up, really common in writing intensive courses is a draft sequence. Maybe rough draft and final draft, or rough draft, intermediate draft, final draft. I do all sorts of things like give me your introduction, give me your bibliography, whatever sequence you are. And you want to avoid false matches when you're doing a draft sequence so that you don't get the final draft and say that's 95% the same as this other paper, to come to find out it's the student's rough draft. You don't want that, right? So to avoid false matches, when you are doing a draft sequence, there's a couple of things you want to do. One draft is one assignment in Canvas, right? And that's a little bit different than the older API plugin that Bill referred to, because there the best practice was one assignment in Canvas for all your drafts of that paper. Here, one assignment in Canvas per draft, and I actually like this a lot because it's going to put each draft in the student's calendar in Canvas, in their to-do list. If you use modules, it's going to have a separate item for each draft. It's going to make it really clear to the student how many drafts they're expected to deliver and when they're expected to deliver them and what the due dates for those drafts are. And so, but when you are in the Turnitin settings, if it's a rough draft, go into your optional settings and say, do not store the submitted papers in the repository. Otherwise, you get false matches. The final draft, you may very well want to store the papers in the standard repository, because that's going to mean that if somebody finds a USB flash drive lying around with a great history paper on it and decides to go ahead and turn that paper in, Bill style, then you want that paper to show up as a match when you get it for the second time. So that's the value of the repository and all those petabytes that Bill was talking about. I don't know what a petabyte is. So, it's easy enough to do. I think it works really well, and I use modules, so it's great. I set up a module. I say, here are your instructions. Here are your scaffolding or pre-writing assignments. Here's your rough draft with your peer mark assignment, and here is your final draft. And it creates a very nice module sequence that the students move through linearly. It works very well for me. And I don't know what your use cases are, but maybe that'll work well for you too. Okay. Another common situation is group work, and there is no way around this. Micah, there is no way around this. This is a workaround. This is not part of the design. Because what happens in Canvas, when you select external tool submission on an assignment, your group work controls disappear. They're gone. So by the time you've said, I'm going to use something that's outside of Canvas for this assignment, you no longer have the option of group work unless that external tool supports the group work. And I'm not sure why that is. Maybe it's the immaturity of the LTI specification. Maybe it's something that Canvas hasn't gotten to in their programming. I'm not sure why, but it is the way it is. So what I recommend, get one person, the group leader maybe in Canvas. You can get a group leader, and you can have them submit. Just one person per group. One person per group, have them submit. And then the instructor can complete anything they want to complete and turn it in. They can check the originality reports. They can use rubrics and quick marks to grade. If you're like me, I take my kids to the park and I get my iPad, and we live in a rural area. There's no Wi-Fi at the parks. And I just grade on my iPad, and the kids play. Some of the moms there give me dirty looks. And, because I'm using technology, I'm not focusing on my kids. But if I wasn't using my Turnitin iPad app, I would be in my office, and the kids would be watching Netflix or something. I don't know. They're at the park. I'm getting my work done. It's great. But if you are needing some group work, one person for the group submits. And then once you get all of your stuff done and turn it in as the instructor, Turnitin has a great PDF view that you can download, the current view. You can download the originally submitted document. You can download a PDF that's unmarked. You can download the current view. Current view can have the originality report in it, and it can also have the quick marks and rubric feedback in it. And this is awesome for all sorts of things. My adjuncts will send me PDF copies when they want a second opinion on an originality report. What should I tell this student, or what's the school's policy about academic honesty? I say, send me the PDF and I'll take a look. It's great, as long as you keep in mind the FERPA issues that are going on there. But the best way to get the group work done is one person turns it in, that person gets the gets the results, downloads the PDF, and shares it out to the group. If you want to, you can do this as the instructor. You can get this and share it out with each group. But if you're teaching like 300 students in a class, you may want to delegate this to the person who turned it in. And so there you go. But I think if you know what the expectations are, and you know how the LTI works, and you take the time to learn it, it's got a lot of functionality. and it works really well. We've been using it since it came out, and at first it was a little rocky. Micah remembers back then when we started talking about the LTI and how it was working, but it's come a long way, and Bill, I believe in you. I believe in you. You're gonna make things, take something that works well for me, and you're gonna make it even better, save me more time, and make things even more functional. So, I don't know how your school does it. When we get ready for a new term, we copy Canvas courses. My good friend Charlie Adams here says, here are your course shells. And I go to each course shell and I say, I want to copy the course that I had from last semester, and then I'm going to start working and making changes, revising and things like that. So how does the LTI work with copying classes? When Bill and I were working on this presentation, it's the one thing I said to him, Bill, I'd like you to help me out with this. It takes some maintenance work. Here are the possible scenarios. There's actually an additional scenario. First of all, if you don't have enough information in Canvas, then Turnitin can't initiate the LTI, and a student visiting will get an error message. Doesn't work. Contact your instructor. Okay? If you've got your start date and your due date and your points and everything looks good in Canvas to ship over to Turnitin, then, and the instructor does nothing, when the course gets copied, the first student to visit it creates the assignment in Turnitin, and it uses the Turnitin default settings. If that happens to you and you don't like those settings, you can go in and change them real quick. Just be aware that that's what happens. Now, if the instructor copies the course and then they go in real quick and just click on each Turnitin assignment and open it up, it uses the instructor's save defaults. And if that's what you want, it takes about 30 seconds per class. You go to your assignments and you open up in a new tab your 5 or 6 Turnitin assignments, and then you're done. As soon as you don't even have to look at it, you open it in a new tab and it's done. Or you have a question? Sure. So one of the I guess benefits of loading in the same tab is that all you got to do, really you got to click on it. And so I understand what you're saying. And like I said, when Bill and I were working on this presentation, I said, Bill, help me out with the maintenance, the semester to semester maintenance. I find Turnitin to be middle of the road for my LTIs. I've got some that require more maintenance than Turnitin. Turnitin's kind of like right there in the middle. And then I've got some where I'd like Turnitin to be that require no maintenance from me. And that's the goal. Bill, would you?
Yeah, I will just say, in the vein of these things that are, too many clicks, bad experience, takes too much time, one of the exercises I've had my product team and the engineering team working on is over August and September, how can we start addressing some of these things? So for example, with the courses and the copying, that's really high on our list. I don't think it's going to be an August thing, but we'll start to make improvements probably in September, October, that kind of time frame. Yeah, maybe I will. I'll get to that, yep.
And that's definitely a Bill question. People start talking about coding and my eyes just kind of glaze over. I like to think of myself as a strong and demanding and meticulous end user, but once people start lining up code, I don't know, right? Anyway, the last scenario, of course, is that you can edit, once you copy a Canvas course, you may have to go in and edit. If you want to add a pure mark assignment or something like that aren't your saved defaults, you can go ahead and do that. And so there it is. There are other scenarios. Up on the Canvas community, I have a pretty developed document that I've collected as people have asked questions and I've answered them and I add them to, it's called Canvas and Turnitin, real simple title. If you go to the community website, type in Canvas and Turnitin, you'll see it. There's also a plagiarism group up there, and people ask and answer questions about academic honesty and Turnitin, because obviously it does deal with academic honesty as well as feedback. And I know that along with Bill, Turnitin has also hired a new community person, and they are working on interacting more with customers in various ways. And so there you guys go. So I'm guessing, because I'm just the guy who uses the product, Bill's the guy who makes it. I'm guessing you guys have questions for Bill.
Yeah, so let me, Well, let me, I have actually 2 more slides, or actually just 1 more slide. So let me hit this, and then we can open it up for Q&A. So where are we going in terms of our investment, not only just in Canvas in general, but LTI as well? So, as we discussed earlier, the early iterations of LTI, just a little too immature to really provide the full flexibility in your workflows that we really wanted to achieve, right? And so that's the big disparity between the API and the LTI experience. LTI is getting better. So we are actively working on the 2.0, 2.1 implementations of LTI. Our plan is to start testing that with our customer base this fall, with the plan to generally roll it out for the next school year. That's pretty much what we're thinking. Simultaneously, there's a lot of overlap between what Canvas is trying to achieve with the plagiarism framework and what LTI, the new versions of LTI do. It actually dovetails really nicely. So we will be doing that in conjunction. And so in the near future, for those of you who are interested, we will start be reaching out, seeing who would like to try this out. We'll test it, we'll battle harden it, and then roll it out for the next school year. That's both the framework, if you want to use the Canvas framework, or if you want to go with our own LTI implementation. Questions? Yeah, shoot. Do you want to? You sure can.
If we were interested in testing out one of those 2 integration pathways,
Yeah.
would that have to be an instance-wide buy-in? Or if we had like super high user instructors? I'm an admin for our Canvas instance, and I know I have some instructors that would be gung-ho, and I have other instructors that would be like, please don't throw me in this playground yet.
Sure, yeah, totally understand. So I think the answer is probably both. We would run a beta program, and you'll probably be hearing about that in the next 2 months or so. But kind of the first instance is always making sure we didn't screw anything up, right? And so, frankly, keeping it very limited. And so a power user would be a great person to have, like, test it, and then roll it out.
Would that mean that there were 2, sorry, I'm totally monopolizing the questions. Would that mean that there would be 2 integrations in Canvas simultaneous, 2 Turnitin integrations in Canvas simultaneous, and we would have to like tell our instructors, like, hey, everybody use the Turnitin,
right? Just like
LTI,
today,
API, and then like Laurel, this is yours.
Well, and exactly, and it's just like today, right? You can use the API and LTI side by side. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So one of the things that happens in Canvas is that you can configure an LTI on the account level, the sub-account level, or the course level. Charlie, who's my Canvas admin, may not know this, but I've got several LTIs going on in there that he doesn't know anything about, unless he's taking a look at my course. So I would think that you probably could take a beta and even put it in a sandbox course or a test course and test it out there, and then maybe test it out in a live course as your next step, and then go all the way to the account level. All right.
I've used the native for like 8 years so far, and I'm new to the LTI this last semester, and I'm having trouble, and I thank you so much for what you put on Canvas. It's been so helpful. But I haven't found 2 things that I missed from native that I would love to see, or if you've addressed it or going to address in the future, is being able to submit for my students. And also being able to do a single submission. Like if I'm getting something suspicious and I don't want to create a whole assignment for it and I just want to submit that one, I don't have that access anymore, or is it hidden and I just need to click a setting and I can't find it?
So we have options to help you with both. So the first one, submitting for a student, has come across quite a lot. And so something, obviously, we're looking at how do we implement that more broadly. And then you're kind of saying like you just want a doc-to-doc kind of comparison, right, in the latter scenario. Yeah. And so there are ways to do that. We have a product in particular that does that. We can certainly talk about that if you want to swing by the booth this afternoon.
Well, native has it. It's just right there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I make a suggestion?
Thank you.
And one workaround that we have found is that our admin has created a sandbox course and has made all of us teachers students of that course. And so there's like an assignment in there that we can then upload some text into and then generate that originality report. That's one way that we've kind of worked around that issue, if that helps.
So my solution to that is quick submit. Because if you've got a Canvas integration, you still have access to the turnitin.com web portal. So an instructor who's accessed the LTI with their default school email goes to the Turnitin web portal, goes to through the password reset submission, because I don't know what it is from Canvas, it's something. But you can go through and reset your password, and then it's something that you know. You go into your account settings, you turn on Quick Submit, and Quick Submit, I use it to check all sorts of stuff. So I take quizzes from Canvas, and I can get the students' responses, and I run it through Quick Submit. If you use a file submission on a quiz, you can just download them in bulk and upload them in bulk, and it's not bad. I get a discussion board, because where I'm finding a lot of my plagiarism is these days is not where they know they're going to receive scrutiny. It's where they think that I'm not paying much attention, the everyday stuff. So I just go to a discussion board, I hit Control-A. It's going to be messy. I'm going to get code. I don't care. It's going to match the code. It's going to take me 2 seconds to click through it. And I take it, and I put it in through the Quick Submit. And then I have conversations with the students I need to have conversations with. And as far as submitting for a student, you can do that too. You've just got to go to the Turnitin web portal, because all the LTI connection is a connection to Turnitin. The courses that Canvas creates are in Turnitin.com. The assignments are there as well. I don't like to mess with it too much on the Turnitin side, but I have tested submitting for a student, and as long as the student has accessed the LTI before, they're going to be there in the course roster that's created from Canvas, and you can submit on their behalf through the web portal. I know that's not ideal, and it's not as smooth as Bill is going to come up with, but it can be done. We got, I think, probably about 4 more minutes left, so you...
So sorry. You just asked my question. Discussion boards. When can we have Turnitin on the discussion boards?
Great question. First time I've been asked that question. That hasn't been on my radar. So thanks for bringing it up. I'm still...
I think Canvas actually told our executive leadership that it was coming.
Okay.
So I think that I think you've got some
Surprise.
rumors out there.
All right, so sorry about this one, but I'm just making sure I have a handle on this. So will the new plagiarism framework or the LTI 2.0 be able to handle group assignments, differentiated assignments, or closing an assignment for submission, but still allowing students to access the originality report?
Some of that is still, I mean, it's, just to be completely frank, it's still very much in progress. We are actively working with Canvas now as they're iterating on the framework. We're iterating on our development for the framework. So quick answer, some of it's going to happen. It's really going to be a question of timing. And, you know, for example, even today, the spec for the plagiarism framework is still a work in progress. So I hesitate to confidently tell you 100% this fall, all of those things will be there, but we're working and we're pretty aware of all of them.
So if you don't mind due dates and working with dates, what you can do is leave off the custom code to sync the due date to Turnitin. Then you put your due date in Canvas, and that's the due date. Then you edit the due date and Turnitin, because it's going to be editable if you don't have the custom code in, and you tell Turnitin not to accept late submissions. So you set it for Friday, September the 3rd. Not even sure that that's the date, but in Canvas, and then in Turnitin, set it for whenever you want to cut off submissions, and you're done. It's going to create a little bit more work, and if you have instructors who rebel against that, then for that person who needs that or wants the exact timing, try setting up the LTI on the course level differently for them and call it, Steve's Turnitin, and say, Steve, you pick your Turnitin, and you're going to create a little bit more work for yourself, but you're going to be able to indulge your OCD.
I think my follow-up, though, is do you guys have documentation on that? Because trying to explain what due dates to modify and where for my faculty, it's not that they're not willing to do the work, but that I can't explain it to them because I struggle with it. So I would like to be able to provide them a resource for it.
I mean, I can make a tutorial and put it up on the Canvas community site, sure, no problem.
So we are probably at time, so maybe one more question?
So it's not really a question, it's a suggestion.
Yeah.
If you're working on discussions, I would suggest that you also look at things like web pages and HTML and PDFs and other things that aren't typically thought of as checking for plagiarism.
Definitely. Yeah, and we have a lot of interest as well just in how people are trying to defeat the system by using things like images and like what can we really start to do to make calling those kind of obvious cheats a little more easy to recognize.
So one of the last things, because we're out of time, that I would suggest that I've started doing, I use an LTI called Perusal. Perusal is social document annotation. I think Hypothesis does something similar. Perusal is pretty awesome, and you have to configure it manually. It's not in the Canvas App Store, but it works. And what Perusal will do is when your students annotate the document that they're discussing, it will give you a nice CSV file that you can download. You can take that CSV file and you can submit it to the Turnitin Quick Submit. And it actually looks pretty neat, and it's a lot neater than what you get from copying and pasting the Canvas discussion board. And I've also found that just the nature of annotation, fewer students are inclined to go to SparkNotes or Wikipedia or whatever the discipline is. Because you just say, hey, give me your thoughts as you read. Annotate this. Anyway, thanks for coming, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, everybody.